Welcome back to the Mike Gallagher Show. Speaker Newt Gingrich. How have you been, sir?
Well, I've been doing great, and I think your point is extraordinarily well made. I wrote a novel last year called Duplicity about a Somali American running for Congress from Minneapolis while his brother was the number 2 leader in Al-Shabaab in Somalia.
I read it.
And it makes the same point that the Israelis are making, which is how do you distinguish? I think in that sense, the Europeans have been just crazy to allow thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are clearly totally unvetted to come into their countries. And you are right, it's the face of evil. But I think that's why I've said all along, you're not going to get a peace process between Palestinians and Israelis as long as leading Palestinian groups want to destroy Israel and say, their goal is to wipe out, as the head of Hamas said at one point in the New York Times, not a single Jew will remain. Well, you don't negotiate peace with somebody who wants to wipe you out.
And yet when Trump says, let's scrutinize this whole immigration program and not let Muslims who are not citizens of the United States into the country until we can figure out how not to let something like what happened in Israel yesterday happen here. And of course it has happened here. He's condemned as a xenophobe. He's a bigot. He's anti-Muslim. So do those same accusations apply to Israel with their Muslim ban basically during Ramadan?
Of course, the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party is going to offer a very anti-Israeli platform plank at the Democratic Convention. I mean, the left wing of the Democratic Party is now anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, and you watch the kind of platform plank they want to offer and the kind of people that Sanders has been appointing to the platform committee, because they start with the premise that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Their idea, the kind of peace agreement they would agree to would mean the eventual end of Israel as a country.
So what about Hillary's role with Israel? What you really gave her some credit for a strong speech after she I guess secured the nomination, although I guess that's up in the air just like the Republican process is. What do you make of Hillary's interaction and the way she will treat Israel if she were elected?
Well, look, I don't think right now. I mean, Hillary's always been much more pro-Israel than Bernie Sanders is. But on the other hand, you have to look at her general policies. It now turns out, based on a new book, that Hillary actually was the person who first pushed for secret meetings with the Iranians. It turns out, her policy in Libya was a total disaster. Her policy in Syria was a failure. Her policy in Iraq is a failure. Her reset with the Russians is a failure. So the key thing to remember about Hillary Clinton is the gap between words and results.
Right.
She's a clever person. She went to really good schools. She knows how she studied. She's been married to Bill Clinton, who's one of the great wordsmiths of our lifetime. So her words often sound good, but the results are a disaster.
All right, let's get to the 800-pound elephant in the room. Newt Gingrich, I've known you for quite a while. You know how much admiration, respect I have for you. The Trump situation, are you on board with him or not?
Of course.
But you know that your initial words over the weekend where you called his comments about the judge inexcusable, I think was the word you used. That had a powerful impact on a lot of Americans.
I hope so because they were inexcusable, and I think Donald now knows that. And if you look at what he did Tuesday night, it was a much more presidential, much more controlled, much more appropriate way to deal with things. He is the Republican nominee. I mean, people can play games. This guy got over 13.5 million votes.
It's a record.
30% more votes than George W. Bush got in 2000.
Right.
Anybody who thinks he's not going to be the nominee is just living a fantasy life.
But you're having the same conversations with some of the powers that be that I am, and I was up till late in the night last night with people telling me, you wait and see. They're going to change the rules in Cleveland. It's going to happen.
Well, they can't change the rules in Cleveland. The fact is Donald Trump has a majority of the delegates. I mean, people, it's not about 12 guys hiding in a room in Washington, D.C. living a fantasy life.
Right.
This is a gigantic country. We had votes in all 50 states. And Ben Ginsburg, who's hardly an ally of Trump, but one of the great lawyers of the Republican Party, said, it ain't going to happen. I mean, he's quoting the paper this morning saying this is an impossibility.
And yet there's Speaker Ryan, the role you have been in and you know well, basically condemning Trump as a racist.
Well, what he said was the comment was racist. He hasn't condemned Trump. He hasn't withdrawn his support.
Right.
And again, Mike, you and I are great friends, but I'm not going to back off on this. That single quote was totally, utterly unacceptable. I am glad that Trump has disowned it. I'm glad he's moved on. I'm certainly moving on, and I'm totally for Trump as compared to Hillary Clinton. But I did think that he has to move up his game from running for the nomination to being a potential president of the United States. I thought he did very well Tuesday night, and if he can routinely perform at that level, he's going to beat her by a big margin.
He's going to beat her largely, I think, on the strength, perhaps, I guess, of his vice presidential running mate. I know you've been very neutral in terms of your interest in it. I mean, I think you'd take it if he offered it to you. Are you on the short list?
I have no idea.
Okay.
We've never talked about it. It's not something I worry about. I want to be helpful to the Republican Party and helpful to Donald Trump as the nominee of the Republican Party. And I think, there are a lot of things I can do as a former Speaker of the House to have an impact. And I'm going to do everything I can to figure out how we defeat Hillary.
I had somebody tell me last night, Mike, with your support for Trump, the GOP nominee like you're doing, you better be careful. You're going to have egg on your face because they're going to change it. And I thought they're going to change the rules next month. He's going to get beaten in November, blah, blah, blah. And I kept thinking, is that all you're worried about is egg on your face? Don't we want to win? Don't we want to defeat Hillary Clinton? Newt, I think a lot of these guys don't care if she wins.
Well, not just that. I mean, look, Donald Trump represents a genuine disruption of their world. That's the key thing to remember. Mm-hmm. They are telling you how real he is by their reaction. If they thought he was just one more normal politician, they'd shrug it off and figure it'll be business as usual. Mm-hmm. But they have this instinct, this ain't going to be business as usual. And I think they're right. I think a Trump presidency will be very, very different.
Hillary Clinton is largely getting a pass. The media salivates over her nomination. This story, Newt, of the chancellor, the university chancellor, apparently Bill Clinton was paid $16 million by Laureate International Universities. This is a South American concern, to be their honorary chancellor. There's a report that they've benefited in terms of their dealings with Secretary of State Clinton. This is all fair game for Trump, isn't it?
Of course it is. It would actually be fair game for the news media, which we really ought to just call the left media. It's not right. The news media, it's the left media, because the New York Times is hardly interested in the degree to which Bill Clinton participated in ripping off students to the tune of $16 million, not to count the amount of money Bill and Hillary Clinton have made speaking on college campuses. I mean, she piously says she's worried about the cost of colleges and universities. Well, she helps raise that cost by the amount she charges.
And yet I'm pulling my hair out because the people who are so apoplectic over Trump University aren't spending a whole lot of time on Bill Clinton and involvement with Laureate International University.
Well, first of all, there's no reason to believe that she is, the Trump University is a real problem. I mean, fact is, as Trump keeps saying, he has 10,000 students who've signed affidavits that they like the courses. Right. He's got people on videotape saying the courses help them earn a better living.
Yeah, but Newt, they don't count. They're a little bit like the 13 million primary voters. They don't count. That's
right. It's like Clarence Thomas, who I used to think was African American, until he got nominated by a conservative, and then obviously he wasn't. Because by definition, you couldn't be an African American and be nominated by a conservative.
Right. We sent a meme out yesterday that got great response. For 30 years, Trump's been in the public eye. He's never been called a racist until he ran against Democrats.
Right. And of course, they're going to use vicious language for a practical reason. They can't explain the collapse of their policy. You look at, I tell every Republican I talk to, there are two big numbers in the last few weeks. Friday, there was reported that in May, we created one job for every 8,000 Americans. Now, You can go to every millennial in the country who's trying to pay off their student debt and say, Hillary Clinton thinks the economic policy that created one job for every 8,000 Americans is okay. Donald Trump wants us to grow faster, have more jobs, and higher take-home pay. Which future do you like better? Second, the director of National Intelligence Staff reported that the Chinese last year stole an estimated $360 billion in intellectual property. And I tell everybody, you can be for free trade, but not with a thief. So, again, you can go to the millennials and say, Hillary Clinton thinks it's fine to negotiate deals where your intellectual property is going to give you middle-class status and create a job for you is stolen by the Chinese, and the government does nothing. And I think those kind of facts about the real world are going to ultimately trump, to use a term, any kind of name-calling by the left.
Make sure you get Newt Gingrich's free newsletter, gingrichproductions.com. It's a must-read for me every single week. I hope you have a good seat picked out at Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland next month, because it's going to be quite the adventure, isn't it?
It is. I'm not sure I'll be sitting very much. I'm going to be coming to your do your show and go to do other things, but it's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a historic convention. I have great faith in Trump's ability to generate a really exciting time. And I think it's going to be, and the following week it's going to be followed by the left's effort to insist that Hillary Clinton move to the left, or they're going to just have a horrendously destructive convention. So I think it's, this game is a long, long way from over, and I think we're going to do just fine.
What a summer we're in for. I'll see you in Cleveland, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Great having your perspective on the Mike Gallagher Show. Newt Gingrich, join us.